here in about 5 minutes. So where's the mic? Is this the mic here? So, do you just want to do the intro? Because there's like just one mic. They won't hear you. They won't hear him over there, will they? Huh? Do you want to just stand over here and do the intro? You can pound through the intro since I have to do a presentation anyway. Just because you're not on camera over there, the mic won't pick you up. Alright.
We can do it together. So we can occupy.
No, this looks too close, man. You want to do it this way?
Sure.
Alright. Do we have everybody? Right here?
Unless we switch positions. And then
Slow down, big boy. We're okay. We don't need to be switching positions or any of that other stuff, okay? Stay focused here.
Little PHP sutra.
Alright. Everybody's here, right? We're not missing anyone? Let's see, so the camera only sees us, not everybody. Does that see all the 50 people out here? 50? Can everybody hear me? Everybody in the back there? Woo! See what I'm doing there? I'm giving the illusion that there are more people. Never mind.
Oh, that's good. I bought it.
Alright, so we'll go ahead and kick through our intro slides here real quick.
So I am Tom Rideout, PFY on IRC.
Good. I'm Eric Shokum on Twitter.
Twitter and IRC.
What's PFY stand?
Trade secret.
I have no idea what that means. Many of you know we're kind of couple groups going. XDPHP is kind of our, another user group that we all participate in. They meet once a month. The meeting moves from downtown to North County depending on which month it is. This up and coming month it will be in North County, and Thomas will be presenting.
Yeah, I'll be doing a presentation on everything you want to know about PHP 7, but we're afraid to ask. And just a little teaser, I will be talking about the fact that PHP 7 can be used for evil now, which PHP 5 could not be used for evil. So important changes coming. Also spaceships.
Rockets, right? Or spaceships. Spaceships, you're right, yeah.
Will you also be answering what happened to PHP 6?
I will, in fact, be answering what happened to PHP 6.
That's a great question.
Yes, and I'll be specifically pointing someone to the greatest takedown of a troll on the PHP boards that I have ever seen, involving the naming of PHP 6.
So that's September 9th at business.com?
Yep.
Right. Next, the Laravel meetup will be September 23rd. We're assuming at CARI.net. We haven't kicked this out yet. There's no scheduled talk yet, so if you're interested, let me know. We do have, I think it's the next slide. It's not the next slide. We do have a Trello board. We'll get to that in a second.
IRC is one of the best ways to communicate with us. We've had an IRC channel at #SDPHP for years now. It's a great way to get in contact with people who work from home or have a lot of downtime at the office and are willing to help you with all your PHP issues, Laravel included. We're also publishing at San Diego Laravel on Twitter, and our meetup group is meetup.xdebug.com. And we've just finished up our new website based off of the October CMS, which is a CMS platform written specifically in Laravel, and that's now up at www.xdebug.com.
The word finish up might be taken out of context. We just deployed.
Just started. Sorry, we just started.
It's very rough around the edges, but yes, it's there. And I'll show it to you. As I mentioned before, if you're interested in doing a presentation, we have a Trello board. You can get there through trello.xdebug.com. And on that board, it has an entire list of presentation ideas that people are interested in seeing. Go there, take a look at it, see if any of that is anything you'd like to speak on. If nothing else, vote on things that you're interested in. Obviously, the more votes, topic has, the more interest there is, and the more likely somebody will do a presentation on it. If you have an idea for a presentation that you'd like to get published, you just need to get an invite to the Trello board, and you can add cards to it. Just send. I think there's something right there on the Trello board that allows you to notify us that you'd like access to it. But if nothing else, send it to me or Tom, Eric, Tom at xdphp.org, and we'll get you added to that.
We'd like, of course, to thank our sponsors, CARI.net, who is incredibly gracious in hosting us, as well as providing the food and the wonderful new streaming setup that we've been given access to.
So even though there's only about 50 people here, there's probably like 100 million watching us right at this minute.
So, and then of course we'd like to thank Diego Dev Group, Eric here being one of the leads. Diego.
What? I am one of the owners, yes.
One of the owners.
Mainly the guy who works there, yes.
Yes. They're providing drinks for us and helping with all the different odds and ends that we need.
Fantastic. And that is all there is for that. So we have a couple presentations to go over today, but also a few of us, 3 of us in this room here, just returned from Laracon as well. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you can see by my fancy Laracon Louisville, Kentucky shirt that we did actually attend the event, didn't just go on vacation.
Yeah. So these are some of the slides. Can I pause? Pause. Will you go back from me. No. Okay.
That was me before the Southern food.
So this is Taylor Otwell, the creator of Laravel. This is the crew here: Marcus, Thomas, myself. That's Jose, and I always mispronounce his name. Gregorio. So we had a really pretty good time there. One of the interesting things that came out of it was, so as I was explaining to some of you, it's a pretty small conference, not too small. I mean, there were over 500 people there, so there was a significant. Feel free to find chairs. I know there's like 100 people here, so yeah. So there were about there were just over 500 people there. It was real nice because it was one track. So everybody sat in this big auditorium, and they had some real top level presenters there. There were quite a few soft talks, and there were only maybe 3 or 4 Laravel specific talks. So it was a good mixture. I mean, you really kind of got a good sense of different aspects of just the development community as a whole.
One of the big announcements at Laracon was the announcement of the Spark project, which is sort of a souped-up version of what the Cashier project currently is. It's been designed with rapid development and deployment in mind for small businesses. So it handles users, subscription, billing and transactions,
Teams.
Team and group management, and a ton of other stuff that would normally take up a huge chunk of time to just toil away doing something that's been done over and over again. So right now, Spark is being presented to Laracon EU, but after Laracon EU ends, Spark will be going into beta, and we'll have more information and slides to present on that system. But it looks really impressive, and I'm looking forward to it.
Right. The real goal of Spark was, as Taylor was explaining it, is so many of us have an idea to develop an application as a service, but in order to get that launched, you've got to do all this wrapper stuff, like user management, subscription management, all that. So that's the goal of Spark, is you as a developer, as a Laravel developer, you just work on your application, and then all the subscription team management will get handled by this Spark install for you. I mean, you still interact with it, you still have full access to it, but you don't have to build it yourself. Marcus, did you want to talk about your experience at all? We're really sorry we left you at the river that day. Glad you found your way home. I apologize for that. There was some drinking involved.
There was a lot of excellent drinking involved.
Some pretty bad bars we went to. But there's some drinking, almost. So, all right. Anything else?
No, I apologize about the first bar we ended up at. That was my bad.
It's totally your fault.
Totally my bad.
All right. Do you want to talk about anything else?
I think that covers it. Like you said, we don't have a talk scheduled for our next meetup yet, but we do have a plugin in development for October CMS, which will keep this page automatically updated. So if you do need to check it out, you can go to our meetup.com page, or you can go to our official user group page and check out the next meetup section.
So this is what we're building on. Again, it's October, which is a CMS built using Laravel. And all of our links are up here. Our meetup link, our Trello board's up here, XDPHP is up here, our sponsors up here, everything you could want. We do have a blog section here, as a matter of fact, something to be proud of. We have 100 users in our meetup group now. Actually, we have 101. Somebody tweeted me earlier saying we now have 101. So, but the idea here is we'll also start to get the presentations up here. So as you see these presentations, we'll start to create blog posts. I've already created a category for it, so you'll have access to the content. Hey, should I just jump into my, oh, go ahead, Matt.
What's the Wi-Fi password?
Capital C.
It is carried out next as in this loader radio. It's actually like that. CARI, lowercase dot net.
Publish it to the world, man.
I think if they're watching the video and they can access the Wi-Fi, they're in the room.
You don't know that.
That's true.
It's also a really long password to guess.
Well, I mean, it's so many characters and letters, and I think some of those symbols were Egyptian.
All right, so without further ado, Eric will be presenting debugging
Let's
and
go help him with that. All right. So this is going to be a pretty quick talk. There's not a lot here. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them at any time, because I need to stretch this out. How much time do you need, Marcus? Killing me, brother. All right. So we're going to be talking about debugging in Laravel. Some of these methods apply to just general PHP. I'll try to remember to tell you that, but if I don't and you're curious, ask, I'll clarify. So we're going to be working with a demo site we're building for a client. No particular reason, just a site I had access to and I want to do some debugging on it. So running this in Homestead, pretty simple, nothing special. Within the site, it has a search. We all have searches, right? I mean, this is something very common feature, and we need to debug, right? We need to get into code because something's not working correctly, and we need to figure out why. There's some classic methods to debugging. Probably the most basic and something we've all done in just simple PHP. You print a variable out, you exit the script, and you see what it returns. So in this case, we print our variable out, we get PowWay, which is exactly what we expected. Seems to work, right? I mean, nothing wrong there. We want to see what the next variable is, categories. So we got to print that out, we go to exit, we get an error page. Oh, that's not helpful. That's the opposite of debugging. That's making my life more difficult. We have a hint why. It's because the variable is in an array. So we know what to do. We go back, we do print R, we exit, come back, we see we have an empty array. All right. So a lot of typing, very classic PHP troubleshooting. There's also var dump. Now var dump is better than print, right? So we do a var dump, we do it on the search string, we do exit. It's nice because it gives us a little bit more information. It tells us not only is that variable returning PowWay, but PowWay is a string, and the length is 5. We do the same var dump on categories, and we get a nice return as well. It says, hey, this is an array. Your array is empty, by the way. William had a fantastic suggestion. I wish I had enough time to do it. one of the issues with var dump is it doesn't format. So had query, or what categories? Had category, or that's actually an object. In a second, we're going to do query. Category is an array. In a second, we're going to do query, which will be a collection. You do a var dump in a collection, it gets very difficult to read, right? I mean, it's just like this bunch of information onto your screen. So it's a struggle. So to combat that, and we will do a dump here on query. The Laravel way of doing this is using DD. DD stands for die and dump. No exit. All you do is DD, what you want to look at, and it's very simple. It returns a JSON formatted solution. So that you see this is actually a builder object. All these things are collapsed. So these can all be expanded, and it's just full of information. So this is I use DD a lot. I mean, I'll slip in there and do it on production if we're having issues. You just do DD, whatever you're trying to figure out, the status of a variable, whatever that variable is. Go ahead.
What if you're pro-life?
What's my what?
What if you're pro-life? Is there a pro-life version?
A pro-life version of DD?
It doesn't
I know. Maybe make an alias for it. I don't know what to tell you there, brother.
It doesn't make the same output.
So,
Because JSON, it outputs the header from the JSON format as well. So you would be able to do it like that.
Oh, funny enough, it's actually the portion of the function. It's DE dump and exit.
dump and exit. Thanks. I actually don't know if it stands for die and dump. I always assumed that's what it stood for. So
It's for dump and die.
dump and die. So I even had that.
It dies before dump.
Oh yeah, that does make sense. Dump and die. Yeah. So now one of the issues with this is great if you're trying to open up and see what's in the variable, whether it be an object, whether it's an array, whether it's a string. This is good. The issue is this is a collection. This is a database query, and as much information as this gives me, it doesn't tell me exactly what my query was. It's like, how did you get this information? Because I think I know how you got it. I have an eloquent command here, and I think I know what you should be giving me, but you're giving me the wrong information. I want to see what you're doing. A couple ways of doing this. So this is our query here. Instead of doing a get or a first or anything else, we do a to-SQL, and then we dump and die that query. So this is the query. This query is kicking out to-SQL, and we're dumping and dying the query. And this gives us a very nice string. It tells me exactly what that query is doing. It tells me exactly what the database call is. We do need to look at what our variables were. So we know our city was Poway, so we could put this in. But I could grab this, put it in my database client, and make sure that I am getting back the data that I had expected to get back. This is very functional. I use it a lot. But there's even a better method that I do, and Thomas might come across this as he works in some of the code bases I work in. There's another way to do it by adding a listener for a query event. And I will typically do this in one of my routes files. So here at the very bottom, you see I have this DB listen for. And what this is going to do is if a database query kicks off on one of my pages, it's going to var dump it. And this is what that looks like. Nice thing about this is the page continues to load. You can't see it because they have this cool little header, but this is actually two queries. There's a query hidden underneath here. But if this had 3 queries, 4 queries, and it's queries that are specific to the page. Okay, so we're going to get into that here in a little bit. But this is nice because the page continues to load. I can see what the query was. Life's good. This actually includes the variables for me, so I don't have to do any of that work. It's nice. You just have to remember to comment it out when you're done with it. So you come back in here. A lot of my route route files will have this at the bottom with a little / in front of it for comment it out. So that's a nice little trick. The better thing to do, the more Laravel thing to do too, is to use packages. And there are a couple of packages we're going to talk about. The first one we're going to talk about is the debug bar. Love this package. So the debug bar is right here. This is a composer install. Do I have that over here? Well, it's a composer install. You install it into your project. You register the service, I think it is, and I think that's all you do, right? I don't think there's anything. You can do some custom, like you can make an alias for the facade so that you can send specific log files to it if you want. But the debug bar, just in general, just in this state, gives you a lot of great information, right? I mean, I can see what route I'm hitting, right? I'm hitting search with an optional query on the end of it. I can see how big my page is. I can see how long it's taken to load. I kind of see that I have 78 queries. I have 20 views that are being referenced. What's all that? Well, the cool thing about this is this whole thing expands. Bam. So within here, I can see all the queries that are happening for that route to display. It even gives me what database I'm hitting right here and the load time for each one of those queries, how long each one of those queries are taking. Fantastic. This all happens just by having your environment debug set to true. You install the package, you set your environment debug to true. So the package can technically stay installed to production as long as you set production to false. You definitely want to set production to false in this scenario. Like I said, we do have views, all the views associated to make up the page. This view keeps rendering, I believe, because it's for each object, right? Yeah. And again, we see it's all blade. I'm not sure what the number on the end there is. So lots of information. Very powerful tool to have with you as you're doing development. You also get additional, just miscellaneous information like request information, just a lot of information. Timeline, we'll talk about here in a second, but you have that here as well. The second one, and I will typically myself install both of these, and I'll explain why here in a second. The second one we're going to talk about is Clockwork. I was actually a fan of Clockwork. I was not a fan of the debug bar. I kind of started warming up to the debug bar, but I always have Clockwork installed. Now, Clockwork has another component to it. So this is a package that you have to install. Again, very similar to debug bar. You just register the service. That's really all you have to do. There's some additional stuff you can do if you want to do some customization. But even after you register the service, you have to go and install a Chrome extension because Clockwork adds to your Chrome inspector right here. So this is your typical Chrome inspector, and Clockwork becomes a tab in it. So there's no additional debug bar here or anything else here. Your page loads just normal. You have to fire up your Chrome inspector, and essentially all the same information from the debug bars here. Here we're seeing, I'm actually down, I'm actually getting the results of it loading this debug bar here, which I had minimized. The actual search is up here. But if I come over here, I see timelines on how long the page took to load, and where it spent most of its time, and the routes, the application. Again, all of our SQL calls are there with times to load. Oop. And that's it. Essentially the same thing. Yes, Matt?
Yeah, does it create a JSON file for every page load? It's like storage, Clockwork, once you like a ton of different JSONs, it looks like it's one per page load.
Does it create a JSON file for every page load?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
It creates a JSON file?
Yep.
The debug bar does.
No, Clockwork.
Oh, Clockwork. Oh, okay. Yes, apparently it does. I've never even noticed that. Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of these files, like, whoa, what's
Yeah.
this? So I was just wondering, you guys kind of like gone dug and clear them out,
production, you don't have this enabled,
Right.
right?
I have a cleanup script that I run frequently just for template caching and
And where it's generating these files in your storage?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. William, did you have something?
Yeah, one of the reasons it does that is actually the smoke profiling tools built in, because it's actually an extension file debug.
Firebug, yeah.
Which the smoke profiling extension is something I installed, and so it can actually kind of replay requests and retrieve data. And one of the things that's really nice about Clockwork is it works with Ajax requests. Which ones
Oh, right. That's a great point, actually. And I'm sorry to cut you off. For those of you watching the stream, I'm not repeating all that. You should come to the meetup. But one of the things, the primary reason I install both of these is that Clockwork doesn't require a view. Debug bar requires a view to render. Clockwork will work, and if you're working with APIs, a lot of times you don't have a view. So that's where Clockwork really comes into play. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
That's pretty much it. The other thing is actually, in order to retrieve those JSON files, a couple of things, it actually will register in accounts that all from the service provider to each one of those JSON files. One of the interesting things that we've done in TC kind of route calls, we're going to conflict the route call routes with the Clockwork routes. So we run into that with the routes.
So again, dump and dive, debug bar, Clockwork are all Laravel specific debug approaches. Next is kind of the big gun in debugging, and this extends past Laravel. You can use it anywhere, but we'll show you how we use it in our Laravel project. If you're ever going to become a real full-time professional developer, you need to start to learn XDebug. It will save you so much time in trying to figure things out. XDebug is a very powerful tool. The problem with it is it's a pain to configure, especially if you don't know how to configure it. Also, it can be a resource hog. XDebug is not something you would ever install on a production server. Not even to say, well, I'm going to install it just to see if I can figure out what this one problem is. Don't do it. You can easily lock up your web server. Trust me, I've done it. So, XDebug is a PHP extension that you need to enable. With enabling it, depending on your structure, I'm using Nginx and PHP FPN, so XDebug is a separate file, but this could also be added directly into your PHP INI file. We add a couple of settings. The main ones to worry about are enabling the Zen extension XDebug, again, assuming you have it installed. A remote enable, this allows me to run this on a remote server and debug locally. Connection callback, the port that's going to work on, all this other stuff is stuff I just have always put in there and don't know which one breaks it.
What does remote connect back do?
It connects back to remotely. I don't know, do you know? What?
So remote connect back is actually really useful to go work on Teams. As what you can do is with the XDebug extension that you have in your browser, you set what pool you run as your remote pool. It overrides it. And what happens is you send that pool along with the request as a header. And it hits the PHP solvable and it sends that flag. And then remote connect back, as long as that is true, it will actually connect back to your IP address where it came from. And then on that port.
So this is very important to understand what he's saying. And one of the biggest hurdles that people trying to use XDebug come across, that if your server is actually in a remote location and you're like at home, that server needs to be able to get back to you on port 9000. So if you have a router or something, you have to open that up back to your server. There's some tricks to that, but go ahead. Sorry.
So using the remote connect back functionality, instead of all coding saying connect back on this port, which would work for one developer, with that feature you can have it connect to multiple developers, and each of them can have their own request that should be running this going if it is happening to be a shared server or anything like that.
was like I thought that was a proxy setting or something that allowed multiple developers.
It's mainly this, but there are other settings like that. Proxy settings kind of work with bypassing SOX proxies.
Gotcha. So there are some tricks. Go ahead. Question?
Does anybody know what that max nesting help is for?
Yeah,
I seen that too. I took it out today. It didn't make any difference.
yeah, I don't know if it does make a difference. Max nesting. Anybody?
Yeah, so objects. Basically, say you have a object for a view that references a factory, and that factory, say, references the IOC container.
So it's a matter of how deep it'll allow you to go,
Yeah,
which
so the
hence
IOC
nesting.
container contains everything. Eventually, it will keep cycling through and try to send all the information back to your whatever program you're using. But that's when it stops sending information.
So it'll stop in this case it'll stop traversing after 25 levels. Yeah, 250.
Yeah, and I ran the upgrade from 5.0 to 5.1. I think 100 is the default, and you run into 100 in a minute, so I think that once that now sets it at 100 and 200.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks to debug.
I had to say that to 10,000 before. That was not a happy.
That sounds like that would have been painful. I don't even want to look at that. All right. So for the server to be able to talk back to your machine is one of the big tricks. One of the workarounds to that is doing port forwarding over SSH. So you can create an SSH connection to your remote server, set up port forwarding, so that XDebug is essentially talking to itself on 9000, but it gets forwarded to you locally. That works really good, especially if you're in a corporate environment with a big firewall and you don't have control. It's not easy just to set that up on your router. So there are some tricks to that. If you're trying to set this up, you have some trouble, feel free to reach out to William. I'm sure he'll help you. No, reach out to me and or anybody. Jump on IRC and we'll see if we can help you through it.
I know a lot about XDebug. I wrote and sometimes maintain a Sublime XDebug extension.
Get the hell out of here. I didn't know that. You really? Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Okay, there you go. I think our next meetup is pretty easy. Okay, so we're not done yet. We've only configured the server. Okay, so as a client, we talked about some of the things of setting up your router so it can talk back. You're also going to want to install XDebug helper into your browser. This is going to kind of enable this, so we'll get to that. So you install XDebug helper. This creates this little icon up here, this little bug icon in your address bar. And when you want to start to debug a page, you enable it, and at that point, it'll start kind of broadcasting, right? It'll let anything listening know, hey, somebody's trying to debug me, right? So this gets enabled. We can just reload this page, which is what we're going to do. And PHP Storm, XDebug is not a PHP Storm specific thing. It works in most IDEs and editors. PHP Storm is just by far one of the best implementations of the client. We'll start a listening for debug connection here. And with that done, we'll set a breakpoint. So, yes, what is a breakpoint? So, what the breakpoint does is, this is me saying, okay, I want you to listen for debug information, and when you get to this line, stop what you're doing and tell me where you're at. Tell me what is out there, what you understand about my application at this point. So we set this breakpoint, we reload the page, and we get a ton of information back. We get to see what's in all of the variables related to the page, all of our API information, including environmental information that I didn't want to share with everybody and had to blur out, all our database information, everything you could want. I cut it off, I didn't mean to cut it off, but over here I had added a watcher, which basically said, hey, I'm looking for this particular variable. At this breakpoint, and we hit the breakpoint because this line went from red to this purple or whatever that is. Essentially what I said is, at this breakpoint, tell me what this variable means to you. What is your understanding of this variable? That's very helpful, especially if you're iterating over like user IDs in a for each loop or something like that. You can sit here and say, okay, tell me what the user ID is here, and you don't have to traverse this entire mess of information. Yes.
So it includes all the variables that are in the breakpoint line too?
No. So it stops right before there, right? But good question. So I have a couple options here. Now that this is here, I can actually step over it. I can, if this had another, I don't think I can step into the query, right? Can I step in the query here? Because
Yeah, but it depends on I don't know how many this one has. Both programs that step into function would take you, it'll break it into multiple bolts, and it'll take you into the full suite of characters as it is on that.
So the bottom line is, I don't know if I can step into this here, but if this was calling like another function, I can say, okay, I broke here. Let's say I'm calling function location, right? This location. I can say, okay, now step into this function here. Let me see what your next thing. And I can start stepping through. I can also step over, and the application continues to run. I can set up multiple breakpoints. So essentially what I say is, when you stop here, let me see what you have. I look at everything. I hit play to have it continue. It'll come down to here, stop. I can then say, okay, what did you get for this query? Hit play again, down here, stop. This here is new. This green is a functionality of PHP Storm. I remember hearing something about it, and I forget what it's telling me exactly. It looks like it's telling me query is, yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to doing a DD. Is it at any point? If you
No, that's not a DD though. I don't know what that is, but it's cool. I don't know how it gets there.
And also, at any point that it's paused at a breakpoint, you can also hover over a variable, and it should in its tooltip tell you the current value of that variable.
Right. So yeah. When you hit a breakpoint, you hover over it, it gives you information. You can even go in there and change information. So when I hit this first breakpoint, and it gave me, I think I was asking what the search string was in my watch, and it gave me Poway. Oh, actually, right there it tells me search string Poway. This is all this category 0. This is all PHP Storm doing XDebug stuff, and it's very cool. It just happens automatically. But I can go into XDebug here and say, okay, I know you told me it's Poway. I didn't want it to be Poway. I want it to be Delmar. So I'm going to change to Delmar because I want to see what happens at my next breakpoint.
Mostly allowing them after you step. After you do the element.
Well, no, because here I already have my search string defined. So search string is already defined. So that's what I'm saying. I could get here where I'm at the query, and it says, hey, your search string is Poway. Poway. So let's say take user ID. Let's say I want to see the result of a particular user ID, and I get here and it says, oh yeah, we're doing it for each, and here's your user ID I'm doing. I'm like, well, I understand that. That's not the user ID I want. Here's the user ID I want. I can inject it and then continue to go through the app. And I think that's it. Let me see. And that's pretty much it. That's XDebug. That's plugins. What is your favorite feature?
So one of the really cool things about XDebug is when, say you all in a loop, you're looping through 1,000 things, and when you were debugging the problem, whatever, it was like on iteration 999 that it broke.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could obviously set a breakpoint in there and stuff, but you don't want to click the hit next 999 times until it gets to the iteration of broke. What you do is define a conditional breakpoint.
That's true. Yeah. See, I wasn't gonna get. So this was supposed to be the easy slides. I wasn't gonna get into conditional breakpoints, but yes, that is a very cool thing.
Yeah, it's the most awesome thing ever. So you can add a breakpoint and then you can change it so that instead of just breaking as soon as it counts at each iteration of when it hits that line, it will actually execute an expression. So you can do something equals 999, and it'll, as it goes through the loop, it'll continue to execute that expression. And as soon as it becomes a true value, it will stop.
So conditional breakpoints, the watch. I mean, those two features alone are just fantastic to have as you're troubleshooting, especially very large applications. It just can be such a tedious task to dump and dive, dump and dive, dump and dive. Having something like this, or even well, actually having something like this is invaluable, and you really need to learn how to do it if you don't. Yes.
Every time you use PHP, XDebug in PHP, you have to hit that and start listening for debug connection.
Yep, and you also have to remember to turn it off when you're done.
That's right, I've seen it, and I didn't know if I only use that for configuration or I have to use it every time.
Yeah, no, you turn it on every time you want to use it, and you want to turn it off when you're done using it, and you really want to try to remember to remove your breakpoints when you're done doing it, because PHP Storm will remember these breakpoints. Okay, Matt, question?
Yeah, something I run into a lot with this is on the views. If I have an error inside my view file, trying to figure out where it is. Do you have any hints on that? Because it's
Yeah.
compiled
So
into
how to
another
find
file.
errors and views is a challenge for me as well. I don't have a good solution for that. Anybody in the room?
Yeah.
Of course, William. Of course you do.
My turn.
So
Oh.
Volvo does some fun things with views for the sake of performance. So you actually create a view object, it doesn't actually render that object immediately. Instead, what happens is the object gets created and immediately it files the creating event. Okay. The creating event, if you have any handles, those get processed immediately. Then there is a render function on the view object. When the render function is called, it casts it to a string evaluating the contents of the view. Now, the render function is implicitly called when you call when two strings invoke one object. So usually nothing has to happen on your end for that to be called. Now the other thing is it's actually really specific to blade files, and they'll kind of be your debug because you're thinking, I edit my view in this place, it's a blade file, I go now and add my breakpoint there. That blade file is not actually what gets executed. Instead, at runtime, it checks to see if the blade file needs to be compiled. If it does, it takes the contents, does a whole bunch of replacements on the contents of the blade files, and turns it into standard entry file, which gets saved into the storage directory. The storage directory, then the file inside that actually gets executed then when the render function is called. So what I would usually do is set I would create a composing event, because that happens right when the render function is called.
You said a composing event? Okay.
And so I create a composing event and set a break handle there. And then when the view is actually getting rendered, you can then hit step into, and it will step into the actual execution of the PHP file.
So you add a composing event within your code base,
Yeah.
set your breakpoint there, and that'll capture the rendering of the blade file and allow you to step in and see what's happening where. That's a fantastic solution. Was yours as good as that, or did you want to? Tom's like, no. I was going to say that, really, but
I actually have a concern about that. Isn't the naming convention for the blade files in the storage directory random? Or is it MD5
75.
of the file name?
so did you have another solution that might be simpler? Because that sounds complex.
No, I mean that was a kind of complex way of saying what I was going to say.
Okay.
I was just saying if you have a view, if you're calling a view, you can put breakpoint on where you're returning view, and then step into it, and it'll follow the code as it executes step by step. But that
Interesting.
means
I've never thought to try that.
You
Yeah.
would have to iterate through it for a while because, like you were saying, there are some
It goes
But it's only a
to-
but it's only a view, right?
fires the event,
Yeah.
checks for the file render, does so
Oh, you're stepping through all that?
yeah.
That's why I like doing the event itself, because I break inside my event and then I go into the event handle and then I'm into the file. So
Gotcha.
it's short amount of steps into the actual file.
Because that's where you want to be anyways, yeah.
Now theoretically, you could open up the view if you knew the MD5 view. You could open up the storage and put breakpoint on the actual first line of the code.
Oh, that
view.
seems like that would.
Put a breakpoint because they're not PHP extension files, so I can try that, but at least
You can
Code Debug App. That's all one word. Okay.
CodeDebugApp.com.
Okay.
What's really nice about it is you just kind of give it your information for connecting to XDebug, and that's it. You don't give it a project directory or anything. It retrieves all of the files at runtime from the source.
Interesting.
So it's really nice because any kind of functions that get generated or anything like that, they can retrieve and show and execute.
Excellent.
If that sounds a little scary, the answer is don't think about it too much. There are also Windows and Linux standalone applications that do similar functionality. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm trying to see it now. But,
Yeah, and they're standalone applications specifically for XDebug. Is that considered an XDebug client or? Oh, okay.
It's a pure XDebug.
And tell me the name again.
CodeDebug app.
Code Debug App, and it's a client for XDebug.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
it's,
check that out.
unfortunately.
Yes.
I've seen the other features on XDebug, it says like trace and profile, I didn't know what that.
Right. So the other features, trace, profile, and all this. My understanding, so profile is a whole nother aspect, and there's some other very nice tools for profiling. What's the one we were talking about earlier? Thomas Blackfire, right?
Blackfire is a profiler.
Right. So I've always been told stay away from XDebug profiler. I don't know if Thomas or if William has any input on that, but
It's very powerful if you can comprehend what you will see.
right. And so essentially what this is doing is it tries to analyze your code and explain to you where bottlenecks are happening, what some of the potential issues are with the code base and how to better optimize it.
It shows you things like, by default, so unfortunately it's happened to me to do. Like you enable the trace option, you run your page. At the end of your page, working the extension, then it had told XDebug to generate some trace or some profile or trace files, either one. And those unfortunately are stored on the server. There's no way to retrieve those automatically.
Right.
Then
And
you have to download those files and run it through a profiling application. The profiling application is really good, but it's overwhelming information, especially in a large framework like Laravel or Symfony. There's a lot going on. I would never run it in Zen, for example.
yeah.
It's almost useless looking at the RMLA.
It's almost too, and that's one of the nice things about Blackfire. Blackfire is actually a client. You install a client on the server. It sends it out to a software as a service solution. The Symfony guys are the ones that do it, right? And a very easy interface to understand what you're looking at. The other thing I hear about the XDebug profiler is it's just a resource log, right? I mean, it's going to choke your server. It's just information. It's just way too much information. Right? Not too much, but it's just a lot of
A
information.
single page load can dump megs with profile.
Right,
So if
right.
you've got it running on a production server and you've got 10 page loads, you're looking at
We're not doing this on production servers, guys. Please don't do this on production servers.
I do it in production. I'm a whole
Damn it, William! Okay.
There's also ways to do it securely in production if you are having fun with PHP files and PHP FPM and other things like that. If you're doing this with mod PHP and Apache, don't.
It's also worth noting that XDebug alters the stack dump, the stack trace of PHP. So normally when you get a PHP stack trace from a fatal error, it just gives you a real simple description. XDebug will give you a full stack trace of the error.
Huh, I never knew that. Cool. Any other questions? Matt.
Last one with clock.
Last question, because I'm actually running long, I know. Sorry, man.
Please repeat the question.
I have to repeat.
Clockwork, you have to have the application service provider for it, right? That you set up.
No, there's no, I'm sorry, the question was for Clockwork, do I need to have an application service provider? You're talking about within Laravel?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so if you only wanted the development, so you wanted the composers to say only install my development server, but then when you get into your production server, if you have that as an application service provider, then it doesn't actually exist before you get an error. So I was wondering how you get around that.
Right, so again, the way I get around it, it also keys off the debug setting for your environment. So it's just there for me in production, but as long as debug set to false, it's not accessible. sure that still works in 5?
So
That still works in 5?
I really don't like the .env system. I still use.
Oh, I love the .env system. You're out of your mind. I respected you up until that comment.
Well, it's because I motion control everything. I
Yeah.
have the .env system.
The old method of
So the old
Laravel
method,
still works.
so what's being talked about here is the old method of defining different environments through a folder structure in the config directory still works in 5.5.1. Okay.
What a lot of people will do then, if they're doing that, is they'll create, oh, well, this is my production configuration. Don't do that. Instead, create a specific configuration for your dev environment.
Right.
And it's a lot safer to do that. You don't want to accidentally load in the wrong configuration of production, so you should always assume config/type.php is your production configuration. Load different environments at once.
So with that in mind, it works the same way where if there are conflicting settings, the setting for the environment will overwrite. Okay.
Depends. It's actually there's some stuff that it can intelligently combine.
Uh-huh.
Like you don't actually have to provide the entire array of source titles inside of the development application. Instead, you just provide your array and the one you want to add, and it will know if sort of providers you likely want to merge that with your original content.
Okay. And you're doing the application detection the same way you used to?
You can, or you can set. You can combine things, so you can still set what environment it is using with the
.env file?
You can do all that.
So if I set it in my .env file as environment is development, it automatically knows if there's a development folder in my config directory, those are the settings for that environment. Well, that's interesting, and I'm gonna have to
Another thing
try
that's
that.
really useful is try managing configuration settings for packages from your .env file.
Okay.
It's not quite as nice.
Huh. Cool. Okay. I said that was my last question, and I'm not lying. It's my last question. No. Do you need time? Any more questions? Okay. Clapping. Clapping's good. You're encouraged to clap. Clap. Fantastic. All right. We're going to take maybe a 5-minute break. Stretch your legs. Bathrooms are out the hall to your right. Probably have some pizza left. Sodas over there. We'll let Marcus get set up, and Marcus is going to be talking about Forge. What's that? Do you want the clicker? Oh, you got a clicker?
I would like to.
Want the clicker? Yeah, you can have it. Do you need a charger? You can have my charger if you want the charger. Is that fantastic. So you need this. This is going to detect as a keyboard. You can just cancel it out. It's fine. Yeah. That up. Well, cool. You got a nice little one on there. Yeah, looks good. Yeah. It's not putting that on mine. I just got those done. I didn't realize I had to pass those out.
I don't know where I picked it up.
Yeah.
I got it for
I like it a lot. I like it, Eric. Give me this stuff. Hi.
Doing this remotely somehow? Because I thought you would like joke like.
We're streaming. We're streaming live. The interweb.
Was that advertised somewhere?
Yeah. It was on the pickup page.
How did I miss that?
No, but even before that, I added at the bottom of the meetup, it says live
Oh,
stream.
you added that 2 days ago.
Okay, didn't check it.
So it's being recorded, so we'll be able to go back there. Watch this stickiness.
Good. So I can see my next.
So just cancel that.
Just cancel it?
Yeah, just cancel it. And then, so once you go into presentation mode, all you're using, you're a good man, Google Docs.
Yep.
That's exactly what I'm using. And just left, right click. Should work. There you go. Fantastic. Yeah, it's I mean, once you get the figures,
5 Yelp stars.
It's got a 4-star rating as well. It's multiple buildings here. So, it's true, yeah. Closed-toed shoes are a requirement, yes. But I've seen more. It's worth it. And the hats that you get, man, I think that's all right, Thomas is probably out waving, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so everybody ready here? Marcus is going to do a quick presentation, or not quick. Marcus is going to do a presentation on Laravel Forge.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about provisioning servers with Laravel Forge. Really quick about me, I'm Marcus Moore. I'm on Twitter at Marcus A. Moore, IRC Marcus Moore. I work technology support at a charter school that you've probably never heard of. Eric asked me earlier why I'm growing a beard. I'm just growing this patchy thing until the school year starts, so that's that. I also, a little tidbit about myself, I practice jujitsu as a hobby when I'm not programming. And this is me choking somebody, but really thinking about how am I going to deploy my application? I need a provision server somehow. So
That's Brazilian?
that's Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Yes. So, what is Forge? Forge builds itself as painless PHP servers, and it really helps developers provision and deploy applications. It uses DigitalOcean, or it deploys to DigitalOcean, Linode, AWS, or custom VPSs. Can we do it with you over here? Possible, right? Not quite yet.
Using custom VPS, yes.
Okay.
It's basically the same thing. You provide SSH credentials after the machine's been deployed.
Right. There you go. So get a tour of the place and then be like, oh, this is awesome. I want to deploy my, you have to show them exactly where it's going to be to, like which rack it'll be on.
That is the thing that says that does say custom VPS. It doesn't have to be at the end. It can give you all the hardware you want.
There you go. So what do you get with a server that's provisioned with Laravel Forge? You're going to get Nginx, PHP 5.6, MySQL, Postgres, Redis, and Memcached. You're essentially getting the Homestead, the Laravel Homestead box, but more secure and wherever you want it to be in the cloud. The features you get that are push deploy, load balancing, collaboration, simple queuing, easy SSL, and easy networking. When you log in, this is the main panel that you'll see here. It says create something amazing. That's kind of been Laravel's mantra, motto lately, and I think with the Laravel Spark, it's kind of pushing that forward more. But you'll have, right away, you'll have an option to create a server. For me, I have DigitalOcean, Linode, Amazon set up. Forge already knows what my credentials are, so I have those tabs available to me. You just go into your settings and add your credentials. It's really easy. You just add your API key. You start off with the cool name, kind of Heroku style, and then your server size and region will depend on which provider you're using, of course. And you could have it instantiate a database for you, provision it as a load balancer if you want to. That's a new feature that's I haven't used really. I created a load balancer for this talk just because it didn't really do much for me, just because, you know, I wasn't, yeah. You can also install HipHop VM and hack and enable backups to whichever provider that you are using. Below that, you'll kind of see which servers are active. I have a few that I created here, one on Amazon, one on DigitalOcean, and a load balancer also on DigitalOcean. And then these other three are the ones that I've created before. On the right-hand side, you'll see the connection there. That's, I mean, this is telling you if Forge can connect to that database, or I'm sorry, to that server. It's not actually going to ping the server and make sure it's, so if like this server goes down for whatever reason, you're not going to get an email like, hey, the server's down, you should go check that out. It's just telling you in the control panel that Forge is seeing it. Below that, you'll see, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is the cost different depending
it would basically go on. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, is the cost different for whichever provider you're using? And the answer is yes. For instance, with DigitalOcean, this is the server that you would be getting, and the cost is on the side there. You could basically go to each provider and check their pricing page, and I think DigitalOcean, the cheapest is $5 a month, and Linode is like 10, and it goes up to like ridiculous amounts of money.
Does Laravel Forge cost?
Yes, Laravel Forge does cost. It's actually $10 a month for one account, and then $20 a month for kind of like their Plus account, which enables the collaboration. And I have a slide at the end that kind of breaks that down as well. I think it's like $100 for the year, if you pay for the whole year, and $140 for the Plus. You'll also see recent events that Forge has been, any events that Forge has done on your provisioned servers. And you can kind of see that here, this is the creation of this server. It installed some stuff, blah, 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 when it did it, and then you can check the output of whatever was pushed out of that command line, the output there. So back up at the top, what's that? The custom VPS, this is what William was talking about. If you have a custom server that has a fresh installation of Ubuntu 14.04, you could just point it to your IP address and hit create server, and you're good to go. Have you done this before, William? Use it? No? Okay. I'm not sure what the next step would be for this, but apparently it's pretty
I've
easy.
seen it. I believe the next step is they ask you to confirm what you took your credentials and test that your credentials work, and then it was on from there.
That makes sense. So, kind of what I expected, it would just test the root credentials and then.
I believe it, at least when I saw it last time, it provided a password, and it didn't let you set up any kind of key or anything like that. For SSH keys. I believe that password.
That makes sense, because I'm sure what it's doing is it's doing apt-get install on the box using the root credentials.
Yes. When you create a server, you get emailed the credentials for that server. So you'll get the pseudo password, the username, and all that fun stuff. So. This is what it'll look like in that list from before. When you create servers, I have a few of them going here. This is when it was building, and then these two are provisioning, and when it's done, it'll turn green. Hooray. By default, if I hit one of the IP addresses that was created from Forge, it's going to just do the default site will be a PHP info dump. So clear that out. Hopping into a server, you have a bunch of different options here. Mainly you could install, or the first thing that pops out is you could install a new site. If you're going to be running multiple sites on one box, you could do it by adding the root domain and the whatever the web directory might be. I'm sorry? Yes. And then determining if you want subdomains and hitting add site. But if you're only going to do one site on that box, you could just hop in and hit manage here. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. But going along the top here, SSH keys, these two for me are automatically installed because in my account settings, I've added those as these are the computers that I want installed on every box that Forge will provision. I could also add them manually if I need to. The scheduler, this works awesome with 5.0 or 5.1, I'm not sure when it was introduced, the Laravel scheduler, because you could set cron jobs very easily here. By default, the composer will self-update every night, but you could set it to whatever your, wherever your application's installed, that artisan executable, you could set, is it schedule run the command for that?
Yeah,
okay, perfect. So you could set that for every minute. So it's ready to go for 5.1. I don't know if you guys know about the scheduler, but essentially you have in Laravel, each Laravel application could kind of manage its own scheduling tasks. So if you decide like every 30 minutes I need to do this thing, you could create basically it creates the command that on schedule run, it'll do everything in there. So you set up a cron job to check that every minute, and on that minute, if it's supposed to run, it'll run whatever it's supposed to do, if that makes sense. I hope it does. You could set up, how do you pronounce that? Daemons, thank you. I thought that was right. I have a friend, his name's Damien, and as I was like saying it out loud, I was like, Damiens. I was like, no, daemons. Okay. So if you want Forge to make sure something is running, essentially it just sets up supervisor for you. React PHP is their example. Whatever that command is, Forge will basically make sure that it stays up. Networking, because I use the same credentials and because I deployed with the same credentials, this box, which is on DigitalOcean, can connect to this load balancer with this checkbox and update network. It creates, I don't know enough about networking. William, what is there's firewall rules, but there's also IP table or route rules, yes.
Does it also configure private switch?
Those are the options to do that. And then always, I believe that's just specific. Not sure.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a way to do that because you do have the box on DigitalOcean, for example. They do provide sort of a localized network that kind of connects to you around manually. And so I know for the most part, I know for all the providers that it's set I think it's full of these to kind of get in it. They also, I believe, have WF configured and they do allow rules to connect to configuration so that you can't get locked out.
Right. So basically, for the microphone, it lets it talk to each other and make sure that they don't block each other because of fail to ban rules. I don't know how to word that better. Sorry. You could also create other firewall rules below if you want to, if you need to. Monitoring, we brought up Blackfire earlier. You could drop in per server an ID and a token and install it very easily. New Relic as well, Paper Trail as well. Yeah, so it's pretty much drop in your credentials, hit install, wait a couple minutes, and then events start popping into whichever service you might be using. On the meta tab, the only real thing that's I shouldn't say affected, but the only thing that really creates any change in Forge is the upload file size, so you could change that guy. The stuff all below here is really just data for Forge. So if, for instance, this box is 512 megabytes, if I bump that up to 1024, this doesn't get pushed to DigitalOcean. If I change it in DigitalOcean, I can let Forge know that I changed it. I don't know if there's any, I haven't run into any reasons that I've needed to change that really. So back in the front here, I'm going to hop into Manage. And this is what it looks like when I do. I already have my GitHub and my Bitbucket credentials in my account. So, awesome. I didn't know what slide was going to be next. I'm going to install from my GitHub account Discuss, which is what Matt Stauffer presented at Laracon. I had forked it and done something to it. So I had it in my repository or my account, and I wanted to use it just to deploy something easily. You tell it which branch you're going to be using and if you need to install composer dependencies. Go ahead and hit install, and once it's done, it takes a minute or two. You'll see that this is what you're presented with. So now I have the app installed. I have some deployment options here. If I enable quick deploy, by default, whenever I push to the master branch, it'll automatically deploy. So that's kind of nice. If not, you could always hit the deploy now button. I could also edit my deployment script. If I have something really simple like a landing page that has no PHP or no composer dependencies, wipe all that out and just do my pull and save it because I don't need to do this other stuff. Or I could add to whatever else I would like to add. So any questions so far? Okay. Notifications to HipChat and Slack are enabled by, or not enabled by default, but are available by default. And you can also uninstall and roll back migrations if you need to. So this was all on that first apps page.
So quick question.
Yes?
You said rollback. Are you able to roll back to a previous deployment?
No. Well,
I'm sorry, what was my question?
the question was, are you allowed to roll back to a previous deployment? I don't believe so. I said no right away, but I don't believe so. My understanding is that when you, and what makes sense to me, is you're uninstalling this repository. So you're really saying, wipe out all these, every migration that I've done here.
Right, that actually says rollback migration, which means it's cleaning up the database. Yeah, my question was more of general, if I'm using this for deployment management.
No.
Okay.
Envoy or maybe, which I'll mention at the end. Yeah, Envoy, yes, I think. 90% sure, now that I think about it. Easy environments for Laravel 5 at least. Laravel 5 at least. Hit the edit button. You get a nice blank space to paste in whatever you need to paste in. Hit save. It'll create that environment file for you, and you're good to go. Queue workers by default. You have Beanstalk. For some reason, I already added that there. That wasn't supposed to be there yet. But you could also add more if you want to, easily, by doing these steps. When it's done, you could check the status to make sure that it'll tell you like the uptime and everything, and if for whatever reason you need to restart it, you can. SSL certificates, supposedly very easy. Anybody just deploy or use SSL on Forge by any chance? I haven't. Is it awesome? No?
I ran a situation where I had multiple sites on the same server, and there's something in there where you engine that specify something and default to another server if it's not set up. But anyway,
I've run into that multiple site thing with the default site, where like if like how earlier we kind of jumped into manage the default site and install a repository there. If you install a repository there and then add more sites to it, weird stuff kind of happens.
It's actually more of a limitation because the web browser features are supported, the software that is running it, and also the type of certificate. So if you're generating a certificate that uses SNI or software detection, then and your web browser happens to support it, and your web server happens to support it, which Nginx does, but you don't, then you would always get the correct certificate given to you. And that's because it's actually a way for it to, when you establish an SSL connection, there's a way for it to say and identify what the host you're going to, because it establishes a secure connection based on the IP address before it sends the host header. So there's no way to say, hey, this is for this virtual host. Using SNI, that is now a feature, but that's very late generation technology. Most recent browsers, the latest SSL certificates, all those things.
so what he said,
Yeah, what he said. So can't repeat that.
SSL's off.
SSL's awful.
It's getting better. I'll tell you guys about that later.
It's a whole other presentation, apparently. If you need to change your web directory route, you can under the Meta tab. This is a super ugly slide, but I just wanted to show you that server stuff on the left, per site stuff on the right. You could hop in and just kind of edit configuration stuff pretty easily, and then stop and restart services. This reset deployment state, my understanding is that every once in a while Forge, for some people, will kind of get confused about what is actually deployed and what it might need to deploy. So you could hit this guy and it'll basically force a deployment. So to kind of recap, now this site's online, but to kind of recap, we created a server, edited the default site, installed the repository, edited the environment. Now some private's going to come up here somehow. Although it says free, so maybe not. Really, once my credentials were already installed and everything, it probably took, to create the server again was like 10 to 12 minutes. Installing the repository was like a minute. So you could have something going in like 16 and a half minutes. You're also allowed to save recipes, they call them in Forge. So if you have like 6 different servers that you need to run the same script on, just create a recipe, and then over here, hit the play button and tell it which servers to run that script on, and it'll do that. Yeah. Oh yeah, here's a load balancer. I don't know much about load balancing, but from what I could see, you would punch in whatever your root domain is, add the site like I did here. I don't know if that's the actual URL, but that's what I put. And I believe, I would guess you would hop into the network tab, network them, and then point your DNS settings to this guy. Does that make sense? Anybody have any input on that? Who knows? So yeah, again, Forge, $10 a month, $100 for the year, $20 a month if you're using the Plus plan. With the $10 a month plan, you're still getting unlimited server sites and deployments. With the Plus plan, all you're doing is adding collaboration. They call them circles. So if I have an account, I could say, hey, you could have access to these servers and do stuff with them. Forge is probably, in my opinion, for people that just need to quickly get smaller sites up and running quickly, and they don't want to mess around with tinkering with the server. Or yeah, I don't think it's probably not all that great for like managing high traffic, a lot of deployments, or continue that kind of thing. It's really, I think, on a smaller scale. There is another service called Envoyer, which you provision your servers with Forge and then hop into Envoy. That's a whole other talk that I don't use Envoy, so I'm not sure. But essentially, it's more of enterprise-y stuff. Yeah. So any questions? Sorry, I gotta say, guys, I didn't really have a lot of time to put my slides together, and been a little busy. So I hope that was okay. Anybody have questions? No?